Hey guys, Troy Francis and James Tusk in Warszawa, sitting in Warsaw in the bar, ruminating on a few bits and pieces, and
proverbial dicks firmly in our hands.
firmly.
Dark, wintry night of the soul.
Absolutely, it's snowing outside.
I think I actually do have, to a degree. Well, I'm a sad man, but seasonal affective disorder. I think I do actually have that. I mean, I've come from a very hot climate, and since I've come back to Europe, there is that kind of picturesque. You know, we're dining in a restaurant last night. Romantic dinner for two.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful because there was snow outside, and the same with breakfast that day as well. There's something very picturesque about it, but I think for me, the cold weather and the lack of sun just fucks me a bit. I just kind of get a bit, I'm almost like this character that wants to kind of hibernate and turn into a bit of a flannel, really.
Yeah, well, I've had a couple of really bad years with it, really, as you know, coming back, particularly going to Latin America and then coming back in January, which is the worst time of year, really, to come back to Europe.
Yeah, you're timing on that. It's like the peak of the summer elsewhere, and you come back into
and just go into this pit of despair for the next 6 months. But but it's not. I mean, the good thing, the only thing at the moment is it's kind of. We're recording this just before Christmas, so we've got the Christmas tree out. There's nice lights and all this kind of stuff, and that kind of adds a bit of vibe to it, doesn't it? But then you get into the early months of the year and you're completely screwed. It's like the dark night of.
Well, that's why I've, for the last 7 years, made absolutely sure that I have, other plans.
Yeah.
And my plan this year, obviously, is to be in Venezuela of all places, and that's going to be 35 degrees.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm not going to get shot. We'll see.
Well, at least you won't have to put up with a European winter if you do. but one of the things we were going to talk about was, because in the context of the course of the Edge, we were running the Edge 3.0, which is coming up. Coming up now, actually, if you want to get on the waiting list for that, details below. But one of the key points of the Edge is having these masculine dark triad personalities traits. So those are Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. And we talk about this in the original iteration of the Edge. We really focus on those. We've broadened out the Edge program a bit now. We actually focus quite a lot on some other things now, including hormonal optimization and sex and sexual shame. But nevertheless, these sort of bad boy traits, these dark triad traits, very, very important. But what we've come to realise, talking this through and really just observing people around us and what works in dating and what works in other areas, is that actually these characteristics are great from a dating perspective because women seem to love the bad boy, but they can be pretty terrible in almost all other capacities of your life, can't they?
Just to play devil's advocate to that, though, isn't part of the reason that women find them attractive is based on evolutionary principles of the guys that had these traits tended to win in life.
Oh shit! Yeah, you've ruined the whole video. Okay, cut. No, I'm only joking. But no, you're right actually in a way, because then if you think about people who exhibit some of these things, and the one who always comes to mind for me is Trump. I don't know why, but I mean, I would say he's clearly something. Well, but clearly, clearly people with very high levels of narcissism, grandiosity, Machiavellian, probably in the sense that they've climbed the slippery pole. And also probably, psychopathic, and at least in the sense of lacking empathy. Yeah, 100%, they're ticking those boxes, and they have obviously been incredibly successful because they've been some of the most powerful guys in the world. So you could argue that. I suppose the issue is, along the way, you're going to trample over a lot of other people, and you're going to piss a lot of other people off. And maybe, I mean, we need to get our heads around this, really. I mean, maybe
it's a really good conversation to have, and I think almost we're going to be talking this through, and things are going to come up. But I think just because couching it in the sense of definitely my background, and I think your background as well, we were absolutely lacking these traits. And so we kind of got trampled on. I mean, I'm speaking to myself in a nice, coming from that classic nice guy background, but treating the world as rainbows and butterflies and thinking being nice to everyone's the key way forward. I'm still a nice guy at heart, but realising actually in a dating context and a social context, that basically got me fucking nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so I had to swing the pendulum the other way, and that's why I'm a big believer, and I find the dark triad stuff fascinating because it's something I actually needed and still need. Yeah. And you still tactically need to cultivate it. But it's interesting talking this through because, there's many ways to come at this, isn't there?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we were talking about this, and we've talked about this, had a number of conversations about this from the context of people that we kind of know and guys that we know that maybe display more of these characteristics, and they're displaying them with other guys. Like they're displaying them with us and other men that we know. And we've observed a few times that actually that can be quite off-putting from the male point of view. You don't really want to be hanging around with another guy who's being super narcissistic or being super Machiavellian, seems to be sneaky. It's not something that makes you want to befriend that dude. It's kind of alienating. But I suppose the counter argument to that is you might say, well, fuck that. It doesn't matter as long as I get to the top. It doesn't matter who I trample along the way. But I suppose the point is alliances are very important, right, in life. You need alliances with people. It's very hard to be the complete lone wolf and just get to the
really succeed,
and if you're pissing everybody off around you, you're going to have a tough time, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. There's nuances here. So maybe what we're saying is, with a group of friends, established group of friends, the dark triad traits are almost counter. They're what's the word? Counterproductive, yeah. But with, say, men that you don't really give a fuck about, that could be perceived as rivals, maybe it's actually beneficial.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually kind of emotionally invested, and you don't really give a fuck about them. Therefore, why not get one over them in a way? Although I've always come at it from the position, again, probably being overly empathetic. I take off my mum in that sense. She's very, very empathetic, and my dad actually lacks empathy a lot. But I think I've taken on I'm quite an empathetic person, and it's always been something that I've carried with me. And at times it's been a hindrance because I've been overly empathetic to other people's causes and concerns, and actually I should have put myself first. But lost the train of thought here. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say.
You were initially overly empathetic, but did you?
I think I've always had the problem of being, almost anti-competitive, putting other people's feelings and emotions first, which is a very feminine way of operating, really. Yeah. And it's not, again, if you think about that kind of alpha, dominant energy, and you think about the fact that women mate across and upwards and they want the top percentage of man, that's not going to put you in good standing in terms of climbing, as you put it, the greasy pole of power dynamics amongst men.
Yeah. There's a lot of nuances to this stuff. I think you're right broadly. I think it's about picking your battles, right? So you're going to have your allies. You're going to have your close group of people who are friends or their colleagues or people you work with, and it's not sensible for the most part for you to piss those people off, right? Because you want to have good working relationships with people that are going to sort of nurture you and whatever. But when you're dealing with women, you need to display some of these characteristics. And then, like you said, there could be examples with competitors or people who aren't really in your camp where, again, a bit of ruthlessness is called for. But I guess
women love to play the game and see it get played. Yeah. I mean, today, a great example of the gym today.
Yeah.
Where this girl absolutely smoking hot Ukrainian in the gym. I was in there about 8 a.m. Pranced past me, flicking the hair, giving it the big 1-2, really drawing the attention in. And clearly, look, sometimes where girls will do that and kind of lock eyes with you, and you can kind of tell straight away. But she then kind of eye-fucked me 2 or 3 other times. She was doing squats, deliberately near me, bending over, really in tight lycra, showing me the goods. So I was like, okay, well, obviously try to practice what we preach here and take these opportunities when we see them. I was like, okay, it's 8 a.m. I'm not really, whatever. It's quite early, whatever. But you take the opportunities when you see them. I was like, okay, she's kind of giving me the green light here. Charged in, or just walked in, and she was, to my surprise, to my chagrin, actually very kind of, not dismissive, but just kind of like, I was like, hey, do you speak English? Expecting a very warm response, but she kind of turned away and was aversing her eyes and giggling. And I saw this absolute bruiser, tattered up to the eyeballs, big guy. I'm not small, but he was considerably bigger than me, a few stone on me, and he kind of rose up from this machine and strolled over, and he was like, I'd said to her, do you speak English, quite loudly. He was like, she doesn't speak English, charging over, defending his territory. And I was just thinking, fucking hell, she's absolutely played this to a T to kind of maximise attention on her. And it was she's absolutely engineered that on purpose, because she obviously has been dating this guy for a while. She knows he's quite an alpha dude, but also seemingly quite insecure and reactive. Yeah. Because when I've hit on women previously, and the dude has been very comfortable in his own skin and very comfortable with his relationship, especially in Brazil, I've noticed this. They just and there's been some decently sized alpha dudes I've kind of done that to, and without knowing, again, I wouldn't have done that if I'd known who was with her. But they haven't really reacted. Still, they almost kind of laugh and shrug, and they're like, oh, no big deal, man, I get it. He was not that dude. He's obviously relatively insecure. And I tend to trigger that in guys. I don't know whether it's because I'm decent looking or whatever, but I trigger it a lot in men, seemingly. Guys with kind of like aggressive tendencies will get very triggered if I speak to their women. And he really reacted badly.
Do you reckon he was on the train as well?
100%. And also, if you think about the gym environment, we're lifting weights. It's flooded with testosterone. I mean, you're going to be a bit more jacked up. So there might have been some overreaction there. But he definitely overreacted.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, in hindsight, I just left it. There was a moment we're kind of eyeball to eyeball, and then I just kind of left it. She was hilarious, actually, just thinking about how manipulative women are and in the art of social chess. She was just kind of giggling, absolutely getting off on it. And we kind of stood eyeball to eyeball. It didn't go anywhere. I just walked away. But she's absolutely engineered that. And I was just thinking, probably in his core, that can't be the first rodeo. He must know in her core that she's probably got tendencies to exacerbate that sort of thing. It was too well engineered from her, and it was too obvious for that to just have been a one-off. I mean, maybe you could feasibly argue that maybe they've had an argument, she wants to piss him off, but it just seemed like that was not the first rodeo. And I should have said to him, or in hindsight, it would have been great almost to sit down and have a beer with him and just be like, look, man, no offense, I wouldn't have hit on your girl if I know, because I wouldn't have done that. I'm not the knob guy who would deliberately do that shit. But what would have been great to say to him is, look, man, your girl absolutely engineered that. She really played that to a T.
Yeah.
And you just see like women operate very much from an evolutionary paradigm. They don't want weak sperm. They have the future of the human race inside them, right? Evolution is about a progressive advancement of the species. So women are ruthless when it comes to mating across and up, and actually they're going to engineer stuff like that to test men and see what's up.
Yeah.
And you never know. I mean, hypothetical scenario here, we get into a brawl. I say beat the shit out of him, hypothetically. What she then do? Does she then pass me her digits? And she's like, well, fuck this dude. I mean, women can be ruthless, right? We've all seen it. So I think being versed in they call it the dark arts, don't they? Being versed in the dark arts is actually a very necessary skill. I came from a background of really kind of, I try and see, amor fati, I try and see the joy in life. I'm generally speaking pretty positive, and I'll try and go out and have a good time most of the time. But I think you've almost got to Robert Greene it sometimes and almost see things as a bit more dark and shadowy, don't you? And actually just assimilate the necessary traits to be able to turn those on if and when.
Yeah, well, I mean, she did a classic sort of bait and switch on you, didn't she? Because she was obviously kind of giving it the green light, wasn't it? And
absolutely a setup. And again, I'm not one to. I mean, as you know me quite well. We're in terms of kind of approach incredibly lazy now. We have to really the bird's basically got to be flashing. Even remotely interested. And I'm also not one. I'm not the kind of classic American host before bros routine where I'm going to trample over other dudes and interfere with relationships. It's not my vibe. I do actually believe in karma. It's the only thing I really do believe in terms of spirituality, which is if you treat people like garbage, you're going to get it back on you. So I don't go out my way to fuck up relationships and do all that sort of stuff. If I had any semblance of an idea, I knew they were together, there's no way I would have intervened. But I just got the vibe that she knew exactly what she was doing. She's in the gym with her boyfriend. She's engineered that to cause a bit of a ruckus. Now I don't know why, but it is interesting, and I'm pretty sure she was Ukrainian.
Well,
it's not that means anything.
No, but I mean, it's fascinating how women have this dark triad side themselves, don't they? Because that was probably, you could say, fueled by narcissism.
Women are quite sadistic. They love seeing. I mean, I've seen girls getting off on guys getting the shit kicked out of them by other men.
Yeah.
And I've seen girls giggling in a work context. I've seen girls really enjoying a guy putting another dude down and almost bullying a weaker guy. I've seen girls actually kind of almost getting off on that, blushing, and you can see they're really excited by it. They love sadism.
Yeah,
they are absolute wolves, aren't they?
Yeah. That is some of the stuff that you see actually from female nature is very. Yeah, it's very dark. It's very dark, and I think as men we're conditioned to be super nice, super respectful, everything else, and we need to. Some of us, not all of us, but some of us need to pull out of that mindset and be like, actually, I need to turn up the volume on the darker side a little bit, which is why we teach this stuff in the course, why we talk about this stuff. But
I think an indication is if you're fascinated by the dark triad stuff when you come across it, it's probably a sign that you need to work on it. Because I think in terms of self-development, if you're a bit of a self-development junkie like myself, like you, and you kind of like exploring ways, at least theoretically, if not actionably, you can get better, you tend to resonate with the stuff that you're lacking the most.
It's probably
and that
true.
draws you in, and that's why I was so obsessed with the dating stuff, because I lacked it.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck, I need it. Right?
It's probably true, but I'm also really fascinated with the stuff that I just intuit works. And the reason I've always loved Robert Greene, and I mean, Robert Greene obviously writes about a whole bunch of stuff, but he does, sort of broadly speaking, I think that you could safely sort of argue the Dark Triad stuff is kind of his ballpark, isn't it, really, in terms of power dynamics and so on. I've always really loved Robert Greene as a writer. I just think he's a fascinating individual, and the reason is because he's kind of amoral, really. He's not I mean, if you see him on video, you look at him, he looks like a pretty sort of nerdy kind of, actually kind of quite nice guy himself, ironically, but what he talks about, his ethos is, it's like whatever it takes to get where you want to go.
Well, he also said that as well, didn't he? He said, actually, I was very naive, and that's what drew me into needing to understand this stuff, because I realised I was fucking soft as shit.
And I find that, for me, it's like, okay, so what actually works? It's not like, what is the world as we would like it to be? It's like, what's actually going to get me to where I want to go? And I think, his ethos, and that's why this Dark Triad stuff is so fascinating, because we all experience this as guys. Well, not all of us, but, we go out there, we're a nice guy, we're super polite, we put her on a pedestal and everything else, and we just get fucked over, or she leaves us for the pool boy, or she goes and fucks the personal trainer, or whatever it is. And we learn that lesson, and then you're like, well, if I do that again, this is going to screw me over, so I need to figure something out. So we develop these Dark Triad traits, or many of us do, but then you've got the issue of, okay, but how do I extend that in the rest of my life? And I think some people take it too far, and they think, right, I've got to be this Dark Triad person all the time with everybody, including with other men. And that, I think, can be a mistake. I think it can fuck you over. It's probably not very smart, because if you think about somebody like, I mentioned Trump before, if you think of even Putin or any of these people, they're going to have their alliances. Yeah. It's not like they've gone through their life alienating everybody. No. They're going to have the people on their team who they're close with. And I think guys can make the mistake, if you just go and fuck everybody over, it's very hard to succeed, I think, if you're a complete lone wolf like that.
100%. And it's interesting, because we've got a friend in common who works as a coach, who, the charming man, for those of you who come across him. I like his worldview because it's very positive and it's very karmic. It's like, be a positive dude, actually be very kind of spiritually nice, and decent blokes people. But I do wonder, flipping the opposite way, which we've done often with Dark Triad stuff, dipping in and out, where is the balance between understanding this stuff and applying it, but not kind of going down that path of becoming very dark arse and very, basically, because you can overdo it, can't you? Yeah. And you're just in a very dark, horrible place where you start hating people and everything around you, and we've all been there. But I also think, we'll call him Mr. E's method or viewpoint is also slightly naive. So there is a happy medium here, but it's very hard to know where that is, isn't it? Because ultimately we do want to be nice to people and get on with people. And actually living in the dark is not conducive to a happy life. You feel dark, and you feel kind of like you almost get this fuck humanity kind of vibe, and that seeps out on people. Women want to be around playful, fun, charismatic dudes who have an edge to them. We talk about the edge, but they don't want to be around really dark, negative people. And so there is a kind of a balance, isn't there?
Yeah, again, with all of this stuff, there's so much nuance to it, and this is why I think sometimes when we do these videos, we can make these videos until the cows come home.
Until Mr. M's finest.
Why we'd be waiting for these mythical cows to come home, I don't know, but we could make the videos all day. But the thing is, right, it's you don't want to be just one thing. You can't be this one-dimensional, right, I'm this super alpha bloke who never smiles and I'm just miserable and I'm unpleasant to people the whole time. That is not going to get you anywhere either.
And that's not actually a good assimilation of Dark Triad.
No, it's not.
The Dark Triad guy is actually the very charming kind of anti-hero or villain who kind of finagles people in.
But if you're kind of this grinning buffoon who's sort of like just nodding his head and sort of wide-eyed smiling at everything she says and agreeing with everything she says and all that, then you're not really going to get any play either, because...
And that's been the issue with a couple of students recently. They've always had this childlike innocence to them. Yeah. But it's too childlike, and there's no edge to them.
And the fascinating thing about women is that, and even quite young women, like we're talking like in their early 20s, I mean, it's been said many times, they are leagues ahead of men in terms of their understanding of human psychology. And I was telling you about that girl that I met recently who works in you know, in the OnlyFans and porn industry and stuff. And, you know, I don't know much about her personally, but it's sort of like you look at them and the kind of career they're building, their sort of their sexualization of themselves, but also their ambition, their kind of networking ability to get in with the right people and do all this stuff, and probably just toss dudes aside who aren't going to, you know, forward their agenda. Yeah. It's incredibly Machiavellian, and much more so, I would say, that a lot of dudes who are young, I mean, certainly when I was that age, you're very guileless. You're just like, oh yeah, okay, you know, I'll just be nice to her, and, you know, really clueless. And this is why guys get so fucked over, and I think this is why there's so much rage, and quite frankly, guys get into a bad headspace when they're young, and they get screwed over by this stuff, because they're just like lambs to the slaughter, really.
100%. Drawing it back to the dark triad stuff, so what's an example of maybe a dark triad trait, or one of the dark triad traits not working in a dating context, but not working in a social kind of allegiance context?
Well, I think one of them, I think probably a big one is narcissism, right? Because if you're narcissistic, and we're all a bit narcissistic to be fair, but
people that are completely clueless if they're watching this, how would you define narcissism?
Well, I mean, narcissism, I believe, is a clinical condition, and you know, you can go down that route with it. But I'm talking about it in a very sort of generalised way of being somebody who obviously thinks very highly of themselves, obviously thinks they're God's gift.
Exacerbated, unrealistic levels of self-love.
Yeah, self-love, self-regard, and self-importance, and all that. Now, again, this is one of these things that's a double-edged sword. Ironically, that tends to work pretty well with women, because what women like, it seems, is the dude who walks in and he's like, yeah, I'm the shit, you know.
Well, I am the prize, right? Again,
yeah, I am the prize.
Couching it in evolutionary terms, women mate across and upwards.
Yeah.
They want to believe they're with a dude who actually is better than them.
And so if you don't believe that, and this isn't just a self-help cliche, it's genuinely true, if you don't believe that fully from the depths of your soul, why the fuck would she? Yeah, so you want to walk in there like, hey, I'm the shit. Now,
actually got to be the shit, even though most of this stuff is a kind of a fake it till you make it thing, and you know, maybe actually don't really believe that. You've got to play act that that's the case.
You've got to play out that for a period of time, even if objectively it's not true, and even if in the background you're working on yourself, which is what you should be doing. You should be doing the money muscles game, Rich Cooper routine in the background. But when you go out, say, into the social scene or whatever, the dating scene, you're acting like the big I am. Yeah. But if you then do that with dudes who you're friends with, or dudes who you work with, or people that you are, you know, colleagues with, that can come over very badly. Because I think most guys, well, I mean, we talked about American culture being slightly different, didn't we? But I think a lot of dudes, they just don't. They don't want some dude who's walking around thinking he's better than everybody all the time. It's just not conducive, is it?
Without generalising entirely, saying it's an American thing, it does seem to be, in my experience with people I know, very much an American thing. It does. Yeah. It seems to be all the Americans, especially connected to the kind of self-help and dating industry, seem to think they have to flex to people within their immediate group. It's just a very weird way of being, and it's a very off-putting way of being. Like, this kind of like humbleness and humble bragging thing goes out the window with Americans. It's very show and tell. But just I think the other way we've seen narcissism fuck people on a personal level, from, you know, that we know, is because they think they're God's gift. They're not actually willing to put in the work when it comes to self-development across the board, right? Because they just assume they've got it locked down. It's like, hold on, you're slightly delusional in that context. So I think that's also the issue, isn't it? The inability to actually develop basically be. It's almost antithesis to self-development, because you're not willing to put in the work, because you don't think you have to put in any work for different areas.
Yeah. So that's a big problem, and I just think basically somebody walking around and, you know, acting like they're God's gift with other dudes is just people just. Is it because we're British though, and it's just more accepted in the American realm as normal, and it's actually our issue just being British? It might be. It could be partly to do with that. Although in saying that, look, I mean, I've met a variety of sort of these American influencers, and they're not all like that. I mean, there are people who actually, you meet them and they're pretty big names and they are quite humble. So I think it depends on the individual. It depends on the individual personalities as well, I think. But in general, I think you've got to just, particularly with guys that you're trying to build bridges with, you're trying to have a brotherhood with, you can't go around like acting as if you're better than everybody. It's
almost a bit more about showcasing vulnerability, isn't
exactly.
it?
And I think Machiavellianism, which, let's just say, is a shorthand, is basically sneakiness, or kind of doing sneaky things to get what you want. Again, that's going to go down very badly, because if people think you're doing that, I think that's going to very much count against you. So those two things. And what about psychopathy? If we're defining psychopathy as lack of empathy, I mean, again, it's not really. maybe that could fly a little bit, but it's not really somebody you want to be mates with, is it? Like like the people that you get best with tend to be the people who understand you and you feel you can.
You're just going to have them down as a cold fish. And I mean, the other ways I kind of think of psychopathy is recklessness and fearlessness.
Okay. Well, that could...
And that's actually quite fun. That's kind of like devil may care, have a fun on a night out, and actually that could be very fun. But the lack of empathy side of it, which ties in with narcissism, again, you can't really grow very close to someone if they're very unempathetic with you and they're not willing to like listen to you and vibe with you at all. You're not really going to be mates with them, are you? And I think again, like without naming names, there's a few people we know in common that kind of display basically just they don't really give a fuck about other people. It's like you can't really grow that close to them, and so you're not really that willing to go out on a limb for them.
Could you argue if it was a purely business relationship that would be different? But even then, I think
I think you've got to showcase tactical empathy.
Yeah.
Even if it's bullshit, you're kind of faking it a bit to show that you do give a fuck.
Because I'm thinking now about some people we know who are doing a business thing together, and I think one of them, well, probably both of them, but certainly one of them, I think, was showing that lack of regard. And I think it's sort of like, even, okay, they're not necessarily going to be best mates, they're doing some work together, but still, you need to feel like there's a bit of...
People that give a fuck about them and understand their worldview, and this is kind of counterintuitive to. I think the reason this gets so muddled is in a dating context, coming from a nice guy background, we overdo that side of it with women, and we basically get friend zone. But what people don't distinguish between is when you're not trying to fuck the person and you're actually just mates with them, you have to show a bit of friendliness and empathy.
So why is it so different with women then? It's really weird, isn't it?
I think what people do is they across the board go, right, I've got to be a bad boy, and then they treat everyone like shit. Or they come from that nice guy background and treat everyone very nicely, and that fails as well. But the nuance is basically the quote, all is fair in love and war. I think you almost dial up the dark triad stuff when it comes to dating. But then with men, especially men you're in a circle and people you want to actually build bridges with and kind of conquer the world with, you actually throw the dark triad stuff away, and you're just a genuine bloke. All the phrases, man of their word and all this stuff, man of their bond, all this, it's applicable to relationships between men, right? So we don't vibe with narcissistic dudes when they're flexing to us. We don't vibe with guys who show a lack of empathy when you're supposed to be mates. But it doesn't fly, right?
It's also about being sort of, how can I put this? It's being sort of intelligent with it as well, isn't it? I mean, we were saying before, if you think about, say, narcissism and maybe some of these other qualities, in some careers they're probably arguably helpful there as well. Like maybe in the boardroom it's helpful. Maybe if you're
corporate culture.
that kind of culture. Also doing like we do YouTube and stuff like that. Arguably for the kind of thing we're doing, it's also quite good to showcase some of these qualities. But what's interesting actually is, again, sometimes you meet these big influencer people, and then when the camera goes off, they're actually quite personable in real life. And you could say that's disingenuous, but I think actually all they're doing is they know instinctively. Like I'm thinking about, I think I can name names. I'm thinking about Zerka. So Zerka was very much, would turn up the dial when he's on camera, and then when he was off camera, he was actually very personable. And I don't think that's him being disingenuous. I think that for a start, we've all got these different sides to our personality, so that's one thing. Secondly, he knows what's going to create engagement, so he's turning up the dial. That doesn't mean that in his personal life, when he meets somebody one-on-one, he's just going to be a complete arsehole to that person, right? Because that's not counterproductive, right? And I think it's just having a bit of emotional intelligence around this stuff.
And playing it differently. Like one of the things that I know from feedback from me and Les doing a lot of videos is a lot of the guys are like, they came on the boot camps because they're like, I love the fact you're vulnerable and authentic, and you're exactly as you are on YouTube, and I often get that as a compliment. But I know going on a date with a girl, I'm not going to be acting in that way, right? I'm not going to be really vulnerable and authentic with it. I'm going to be playing the game. I'm going to be exacerbating this kind of devil may care, fast sex guy persona, because I know that's going to get me the result that I want, because I know she's going to find that more attractive. So as you said, it's very much a calibration to different people and different scenarios. Yeah,
it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I've played the same card, because I've done, we've talked about this. I mean, some of my most popular videos and stuff that I've done, and even blog posts and stuff, have been when I've been really vulnerable, and when it's been like, oh, it's all gone terribly wrong, and
absolutely, you wouldn't be leading with that. So a seducer, well, maybe you should, just as an experiment, see where it ends up.
I can't imagine it ending up anywhere very good, really, because it's like, well, women, of course.
Basically giving it the human flannel routine, which appeals to men because we go through all this pain of dating.
Yeah.
For women, they're just like, fuck this dude, he's a loser, right? Presumably, I don't know.
I would imagine so. I mean, well, you couldn't really go on a date with a girl and be like complaining about your ex or how some girl fucked you over. That would be a very bad move. And generally speaking, I mean, women tend to just respect strength, don't they? You shouldn't really be showing a lot of vulnerability in front of a woman anyway.
All this kind of showcase weakness to women, like you've got this kind of pushback where it's called this blue pill narrative of show all your weaknesses to women. It's fucking horseshit.
Well, actually, there was a tweet actually about this I saw today. I think it's today. Chris Williamson tweeted something. He was saying like, oh, you know, the red pill guys say that men shouldn't show their vulnerability in front of women, but I know this bloke who's the most alpha guy that I've ever met, and he broke down crying in front of his girlfriend, and she supported him through, and all that kind of thing. And
it's like an outlier. It's instinctively on a gut level. When that's said, I know that that's not the way to do it.
It's so look. I mean, that story may well be true. I mean, I'm sure. I don't see why Chris Williamson would make it up. I mean, it's probably absolutely true, but it's not best practice, is it? Let's say to be like breaking down and crying in front of your girlfriend and having a mental like, because she generally speaking, she's going to want the guy who's the rock, the guy who kind of is able to lead her through the storm. I think. I mean, unless we are just being these misogynists and we got this all wrong, but I'm not sure. That's not really my experience.
Tactical vulnerability, I think, with women is powerful, but not kind of. They don't actually want to see you in a weak position where the world is eating you up. And I know from experience when I've had bad come-downs lying on the sofa with women and kind of almost needing to be nursed back to health emotionally, that women, it's turned women off. I've lost women over that before. And like even when I've been very ill, you know, and maybe the girl's staying in my house, I know from experience the stiff upper lip routine, just kind of battling through. That's actually what she wants to see.
Well, who was the MMA fighter whose girlfriend?
Yeah, that's a great example, isn't it? Him getting battered in the cage and the girl just being like, I've never been so unattracted to him when he wasn't even fighting back. He should be dying with his last breath to fucking get back on his feet and make it happen. And like, you know, that's when she started cheating on him and fucking another dude. I mean, she's obviously more ruthless than the average girl, but actually, is she?
Well, it's hard to say. The problem is you're playing with fire with all this stuff, aren't you? Because I think there's probably a grey area. I think there's a bit more latitude than the most hardcore red pill commentator would say. It's like, never show any emotion ever in front of a woman. And then you get people like, you know, this guy who was on one of our courses who was proudly boasting in his group how he'd been with his girlfriend for 3 years and he'd never told her once that she looked nice or beautiful, because he was like, oh, you know, I'm so alpha, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. It's like, come on.
That's also just retarded, though,
yeah.
Isn't it, really?
It's like, I mean, come on,
that's
bro.
So stupid. I mean, that's just, talk about black and white thinking.
Yeah.
I mean.
So there's a bit of latitude here, but at the same time, in the end, best practice is not to be just an emotional flannel in front of a woman you're sexually attracted to, because it's unlikely she's going to, you know, buy into that, I think.
I'd agree. Machiavellianism and psychopathy, where does that work in dating, and then it work or it doesn't work in a personal or business context?
Well, it works in a business context, I think. Machiavellianism, particularly again, if you look at like corporate work, corporate America, I think you do need those characteristics,
and
actually.
In the dating context, actually, the prince, it's kind of a. It's one of the dark triad traits which works across the board. But again, the context where it wouldn't work is if you're finagling a group of mates. Yeah. You know, say a friend, you know, you sort out a favour for a friend, but secretly, and it's a really good friend of yours, but you secretly take a massive cut of commission on something like that. When you're insinuating you're doing it as a friend thing, and he finds out, he's going to feel like betrayed.
Well, and I think we've seen things like this happen, haven't we? Where people have done things, and it's like, oh, that's. You know, that's pushing it a bit beyond, you know, and I think we all kind of, well, we have this assumption there's this unwritten code, don't we, that people should really follow, and sometimes they don't, and when they don't, it can leave a bit of a cold taste in your mouth, can't it? Sorry, a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. Again, it's kind of picking your battles, because you could say, well, fuck everybody, fuck the entire world, let it all burn, I'm just going to do my thing.
You're not going to succeed. Human beings are very social. We've been living in packs and tribes and communicating in that sense for millions of years. You are not going to get to self-actualize across the board being a complete lone wolf. Yeah. You need to be able to cooperate and communicate with other human beings, especially groups of men. Yeah. And you just can't be. You can't be this kind of like completely completely dark dude that just is out for himself. Even when we talk about Bond, you know, which we always use as an example. I mean, he's got his people that he on his team, hasn't he? He's got M, he's got Q. And he treats them well and he's loyal to them, even though he's quite dark triad.
Well, sometimes he'll go against M, won't he, and do stuff that she or previously he tells him not to do, and he'll be like, fuck it, I'm going to do that mission anyway. But still, nevertheless, ultimately, he's still loyal to them, and he's like tight with them, and he's not going to fuck them over. But the enemy he's going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, actually, the Tates talk about this a lot, don't they? Partly to sell their war room or courses or whatever, I think. But it's kind of, the point is well made that you do need alliances in life, I believe, to get on. I don't think. Do you think it's even possible for somebody to be a complete lone wolf and make a massive success?
No. I'm trying to think of any one example, but you're essentially just on your own, and there's only so much you can do on your own.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at all the most successful people, they rise to the top because they build alliances with people. You can't be elected, how much of a tyrant you are. You can't get to that position of the Chairman Mao or the Hitler or whatever without being very tactically smart with human beings. You know, so even if it's faked empathy and relationship building, you still have to be able to do that to a degree.
Yeah.
And all of these guys have their inner circle. They're not truly on their own. No one's truly on their own, right?
So why is it so different with women? Why are women so viscerally attracted to this other thing? And it's partly because of resource gathering, isn't it? It's partly because women instinctively know that if a guy has got these qualities, then he probably is going to be able to cut through in the boardroom better. He probably is going to be able to gather more resources for her protection and provisioning and all the rest of it, and any notional unborn child between them. So there's that. Yeah. I also think as well, there's just this kind of, it's partly the emotion as well, though, isn't it? Like, she wants that excitement. She wants that sort of, if the guy is, we're using this word flannel a lot this year. If the guy's just a flannel who's like, kind of agrees with everything she says, there's not a lot going on, there's not much edge, you know, there's not much else to him. He doesn't have this, there's not this devil-may-care sense of he could do anything, I don't know what's going to happen next. That is just inherently very boring, isn't it?
I think women are inherently stimulated by emotion, and the exciting adventure devil-may-care guy who kind of lives on the edge of his seat, is willing to risk offending people, is ruthless, goes after what he wants. That's just going to be a more exciting package overall, isn't it? You're just going to have more bends and turns in the journey with a guy like that.
Well, I mean, if you look at that example of you in the gym today, I mean, clearly, whatever the reasons for that were, but clearly she wanted some drama. At the bare minimum, it was like, right, I want to see some exciting shit happen, right?
You know what happened there? I'm not sure. Maybe I've overblown it slightly. I'm not sure she actually wanted to see the world burn and us getting a full blown rug. Yeah. Although that's no doubt would have absolutely excited her. You could just tell by the way she was giggling when the dude came up and we got eyeball to eyeball that she was getting off on that. I think what happened is she did the standard thing, like devious woman thing, of they're never really truly in a relationship. They're always kind of looking around to upgrade, right? And this is why we see a lot of women walking around with boyfriends who are completely clueless and they're checking us out, right? And checking out other dudes. And I think she's probably used to doing that a lot because she's always surveying her options. She's an attractive girl in her prime. She's very, very attractive, very good body, you know, beautiful face. In her prime as a woman, she's got options, right? And why wouldn't you at least on a subconscious level evaluate these options, right? But I don't think she's probably used to guys actually acting on the fact that, you know, she checked me out. She clearly checked me out several times, but she's probably not used to the fact that guys are actually going to act on that because most men are fucking pussies. They're never going to approach. Yeah.
So when you went over, did you get the impression, was she a little bit like, oh shit, like was there maybe a little bit of that?
She kind of blushed and turned away and almost looked a bit rabbit in the headlights. And
so maybe,
and didn't really know how to act, and then started giving him that. At that point, the dude stormed over. I'm not entirely convinced I think it's just subconscious things. She's checking out dudes, she found me attractive, she looks over. But maybe she didn't actually expect me to approach.
Yeah.
But when it did happen, she was absolutely getting off on it. You know, two men going toe-to-toe, basically over her. She absolutely was thriving on that. Like, she loved it.
Well, this girl was saying to me the other night, "Oh, you're going to fight these guys? I'll be so nice. Like, I want to see guys fight over me." You know, like, I mean, they just love it. It's
the bottom line is, if she didn't, you know, best case scenario is, in terms of non-dark triadness, she definitely was assessing her other options, which, again, from the guy's point of view, dating her, you're just like, oh, for fuck's sake. I mean, this is just the nature of women. Worst case scenario, she absolutely engineered it because she wanted to see two guys go toe-to-toe. So either way, you can see there's a streak of dark triadness running through the dating market when it comes to women and dating.
Myself, Les, and Troy have produced the linchpin course to take you from nice, innocent boys to highly sexual men with unlimited dating options. The Edge 3 is coming. and then the Edge 3 plus Bogota Bootcamp, which is the crazy kind of graduation bootcamp, anything goes bootcamp, night game, day game, grey area dating app game, anything goes in March 2024. It's going to be absolutely amazing. This has been a long time in the pipeline. Myself and Troy have redeveloped the previous Edge course, and we're combining 25 years worth of experience in the elite men's dating industry to bring you a course which is going to change your lives. We've got some of the world's leading experts for different areas, the linchpin areas, sexual shame, developing sexual confidence, Mr. Bonaparte, elite sex coach for men, and we've got Dave Lee, the male hormone optimization side of things, who bring in vast amounts of knowledge, and a host of other experts, myself, Les and Troy, coaching you every step of the way in developing the cold approach and the dating process as well. It's going to be incredible. Get in touch, info@jamestusk.com, include your WhatsApp number and the title Edge 3 in the email. We'll see you there.